So, we are recording today's event. Could I ask, if you're uncomfortable with that, you are welcome to switch off your camera. But before you do that, we thought it might be a bit of fun to take a group photo of the people that are here. So if you are willing to have your camera on, I'm going to stop sharing my screen again so we can actually do this. And we're going to do this in two ways. So we have Melanie, who's going to take some screenshots, but we also have Monique, who's got an actual camera. So we have an actual photographer at this event, which is quite exciting. So really curious to see how this turns out. So because there are, on my screen, there's at least 4 pages of people, you are going to have to wave at the camera for a slightly awkward amount of time to get seen. But is everybody up for that? If not, no problem, just stick your camera off. But Melanie, are you ready? Yep, Monique's ready. Okay, let's do it.
Quite hypnotic.
Melanie, you can just give us a thumbs up when you've managed to get everybody. Still going. There's a lot of people here, which is great to see, actually. Well, we've got 78 so far.
It's so long. I feel like the queen.
I'm okay.
Are you done?
So, I'm done.
Sorry, I forgot to scroll along. That's why it took me so long.
Yeah, sorry, me too.
Well,
that's a fair.
Thanks everyone for indulging us in that. Welcome to the first ever U of G Engage Forum. I'm Sarah Gladman. I'm the Public Community Engagement Advisor at the university. I am also going to just activate the captions for today. I better not forget to do that. So hopefully they will now appear along the bottom of your screen. I'm just going to do a very quick intro to the Engage Forum before we get started with our actual panel event today. So if I could ask, if you're not speaking currently, to mute yourself, that would be great. So what is the U of G Engage Forum? Well, this is an idea that has been brewing for a little while, and really excited that it's finally happening. And basically it's been created in response to a number of things. So consultation with partners that we work with, the results of the public engagement survey that went out during the summer, and also the success of a pilot event that we ran with an external partner, NCR Pathways. So all of these things have led to this idea that people are really keen to have an informal way of connecting, sharing their expertise and learning around engagement. And we recognised, from the engagement survey, that there's a huge amount of expertise in engagement in the university, but not necessarily expertise that is shared or tapped into at the moment. So we're really hoping that this will help address some of that. And it is a cross-college initiative, so I'm really excited that we've got representation from all 4 colleges today, as well as the potential to work with external partners as well. So, giving voices to communities that we work with as well. But I'd like to emphasize that this is very much an ongoing development. This is a brand new thing. So today is a little bit of an experiment, and we'd really like to hear what you would like the forum to be. So if you've got any ideas around that, there's a link to the Padlet in the chat already, or you can use the shortcut that is up there on the screen, tinyurl.com/shareengage. Padlet is like a kind of online message board where you can leave comments. So we're trying to crowdsource your ideas around this. And this idea has been brought to fruition by a number of people. We have a working group, so you can see everybody's lovely faces along the bottom of the slide here, but also these people are here today, so feel free to give a wave. So there's been a lot of work across the university to make today happen. Now, this is obviously our first live event, but there has been a range of activity in the run-up to today. So something that you may have seen popping up on Twitter and various places is a new U of G Engage podcast. So This is a engagement themed podcast. We've had 2 episodes so far. First one themed around engagement during the pandemic. Second one focusing on festivals in particular as a form of engagement. And we've had a range of really excellent contributors to that already. So a huge thanks to them for getting involved. So if you've not heard the podcast, check it out. You can download it in all the usual podcast places. And this is something that will continue. We've got plans for another one coming up next month. And if you've got an idea for a podcast, then please do get in touch. We want you to take ownership of this as well. It's open to everybody. And we also have a new UFG Engage blog as well. And I'm really delighted that we already have a contribution from Mackie Rooksby about her international engagement work and how she was able to adapt during the pandemic to a research project that was supposed to run in Japan. And that blog will be live on our website as of tomorrow. So that's another route to sharing, learning, and starting to build a community of practice around this. So that's a kind of quick summary of what the UFG Engage Forum is so far. I also mentioned that we have our own hashtag, UFG Engage. So if you're on Twitter today and you want to comment along with the event, please do so. But on with the main event today. So we thought for the first event, the theme that was most obvious to address was digital engagement. And I'm really happy that we've managed to find a really excellent panel from across the university who are going to share their experiences of engaging online during the pandemic. So representing the College of Arts, we have Katrina Eggleston. From MVLS, we have Megan McLeod. College of Social Sciences, we have Helen Mullen. And from the College of Science and Engineering, Julian Raboud couldn't be here today, but we do have some pre-recorded video interviews that we will be sharing. So the first thing I would like to do, I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, is ask the panel to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about the project that they've been involved with that they'd like to share today. So maybe we could start with Katrina, just to put you on the spot.
And remember to unmute myself. Yes. Thank you very much for inviting me to be part of this. It's really exciting and just really, really pleased to be here. So as Zara said, my name's Katrina, and I recently finished working on a project with the College of Arts, and it was an AHRC follow-on funding scheme project called A Living Tradition, Expanding Engagement with Pacific Barkcloth. And if anybody's not aware of the AHRC follow-on funding scheme, it is specifically for impact and engagement based on the research findings from an original AHRC project that was conducted. So this was an extension of a project called Situating Pacific Barkcloth Production in Time and Place. And it was run by Professor Frances Leonard, who I hope may be here today. I haven't seen her name yet. And also Maria Ekonomu from Information Studies. So the project itself aimed to empower museum staff in the UK, both in England and in Scotland, and also the general public to better understand Pacific barkcloth, both as museum objects, but also as an art form in itself, and provide resources for public and museum staff to better interact with this really exciting material. There is a huge range of Pacific barkcloth in UK museum collections, which are never really displayed because they are either fragile or too big to be displayed in museum galleries. And there's also a very large Pacific community here in the UK, which a lot of people don't know about, and a lot of the Pacific community doesn't know about the material here in museums. So the kind of reasoning behind the project was to disseminate all of the work that had gone into finding different ways of looking at identifying cloth, work with communities in the Pacific, as well as public here in the UK, and really to share with non-specialist museum staff how they can better share Barkcloth with the public. And I'll end that here so that we can actually talk about what we did afterwards.
Perfect, thank you, Katrina. Megan, I'll come to you next.
Hello everybody, and thanks for inviting me. I'm in MVLS in the Institute of Infection, Immunity and Inflammation, and my public engagement work that I'm talking about today is aligned to the science that we do. So we have funding from the ScotPen grouping in Scotland that receive funding from the Wellcome Trust, and we can apply for that to work alongside our immunology science, which is about understanding what happens in the lung during a respiratory virus infection. And now you are all experts on respiratory virus infection too. The big narrative in our science grant is about communication between different immune cells in the lung during an infection. And what we wanted to do with our public engagement is to continue that theme of communication. So the public engagement work is called Co-Immunicate. And the idea is that we work with a local school to kind of talk to them about respiratory viral infections and get them excited about science, and then have them create activities or resources that would be targeted at school level kids. So we work with primary 6, 7 kids, and they make activities, hopefully, for younger kids. We were in our first year last year, and obviously had to basically pause the event, but we're hoping to go at least virtually into the school in the end of this month in March to try and get them kids to come up with ideas about displaying science that we will hopefully bring to the Science Festival later this year.
Perfect, thanks, Megan. And Helen, can we come to you next?
Thank you, Zara, and hello everyone. Yeah, I'm delighted to be here as well. It's just amazing to have so many people here and to see so much interest. I know from my own work there's a lot of people doing a lot of engagement work in the university, so just to have a forum and a focal point for that is fantastic. So I'm Helen Mullen. I'm in the Adam Smith Business School, where I'm a lecturer in entrepreneurship. But I came to this in a personal capacity in my work with an organisation called MCR Pathways. Now, I've been involved in this organisation for about 3 years as a volunteer. MCR Pathways is an amazing body of people which has really expanded in recent years. And the focus there is about giving care advantaged or care experienced or disadvantaged young people the same opportunities as people who are not in that situation. So it's about creating positive outcomes, and what we mean by that is that when young people go through school, there is a big drop-off, particularly in that community or that cohort. So the positive outcomes would be for these young people to move on from school into full-time employment, further education or higher education, and that's what we're looking to achieve. And through the work that's been undertaken and some research that's been done on that, there is actually evidence to show that if you take cohorts of people who have gone through the programme and had mentoring and those who haven't, there's about 81% of those that go through mentoring go on to more positive outcomes, compared to around 51%, 59%, sorry, of those who don't. So really can make a difference. So the organisation is nationwide, and it has what we call pathway coordinators in each of the schools. And me as a volunteer, I'm associated with the Hillhead Secondary School, which is very close to us at Glasgow. And I have a pathway coordinator there who is amazing. So my role really is to provide mentoring to a young person, and I work with a young man who's 15, been working with him for over a year now. And really I turn up every week for an hour to meet with this young person and really just hear what they're doing. It's about listening, it's about supporting them. It's not about specifically talking about schoolwork. That can happen as well, and it has happened, but it's really just to be someone outside of their school system and home life, who they can trust and who they can speak to. And trust is a really big part of that. So I attend the school once a week, and we have an hour together and talk through whatever they want to talk about, and that we do work towards goals during that time. But I think the main advantage is really just to have someone else that they can talk to. And at first, obviously, you know, it's a young man, 15-year-old, and we are matched. The MCR pathways are very, very careful about matching you with a mentee, so it's not random at all. You're getting bid for. You've got to prove yourself. And I have a background in video games through my research at university, and he's very interested in that as well as business. So that's why we were put together. So that's how I got into it personally. And now that I'm at the university, I found out there's quite a lot of other mentors involved. So through my work with Monique and Zara, we've worked to bring MCR pathways into the university more. And we had a brilliant information day not so long ago where we had about 50 colleagues there talking about MCR pathways and the possibility of volunteering. And I've now taken that project further back into the business school. So something that started as a real personal interest, personal drive, and has developed into something that I've been delighted to see can fit within the university and has a space there. And I felt very supported in bringing that to bear. And I think there's a few more things we can do, but I'll talk about them later. So I'll keep quiet now, but that's really where I'm coming from. Great project. I'm delighted to share it with you, and yeah, look forward to this session. Thank you.
Thanks, Helen. I'm now going to do a bit of tech and share the video interview that I did with Julian, which was just before Christmas, about his engagement project.
I'm Julian. I'm a lecturer, senior lecturer in the School of Engineering in biomedical engineering. It's called Digital Innovations for Diagnostics in Africa, DIDA. The idea there is based on some of the technologies that we have developed in the lab, which are looking at diagnosing infectious diseases at the point of care in, for example, the GP's office, but translating this into the context of low resource settings in Africa. We felt that there was an activity, a very interesting activity to be done in engaging with these communities to try and figure out what actually would work and what we would need to do to make that work. That entails talking to them, making sure that they understand what we're doing, but also getting their feedback and basically co-creating or co-developing these type of devices and the logistics associated with it. Everything was face-to-face. When you do things in remote settings like this, this is the best way to handle these things, is to talk to the people directly. And so we were going to go there at least 3 or 4 times. And so this is Uganda, Tanzania, Malawi, and there were some activities planned for Ghana as well, and Rwanda. And so we had to completely reshuffle this into an online setting. I can say now we've run, I think 6 workshops together. There's a 7th plan for January. And this has evolved amazingly because people are so receptive. It's very much about the people on the ground saying, I really want to contribute to this, and making the time, making the effort, especially in the technology side, to enable this to happen. And so we were very scared, but eventually, actually it all turned out really well. And it begs the question, now looking back, do we really believe that it would have been better to go and talk to the people there than what we have done? And that's quite an interesting concept, actually.
Okay, so that was Julian. So 4 really interesting engagement projects, all quite different, all really worthwhile in different ways. I'd like to throw out the next question, and that is, how did you adapt your engagement as a result of the pandemic? How did you overcome the challenges of the pandemic? And were there any particular tools or processes that enabled you to do that? So would anybody like to come in on that, or else I shall pick on somebody? Maybe I'll just go to Katrina again.
Sure. Yes, I think our case was very much like Julian's, where we had several. We had 5 locations across the UK that we were going to go to conduct workshops. So there would be 5 workshops specifically for museum staff, and then 5 kind of general public open day kind of activities. And a key factor in these activities was the traveling of 2 wonderful bark cloth makers named Reggie and Wilisone from American Samoa over to here in the UK to co-facilitate these workshops, which obviously didn't happen. And you know, as Julian said, turning online was the I guess next best thing that we could think of to do. So instead of having these in-person workshops only for museum people and general public separately, we ended up planning 4 online sessions, we ended up calling them, because as everybody knows, Zoom fatigue is a very real thing and drains you quite easily. So these workshop days turned into 1.5-hour Zoom sessions. And what we found was that where we were struggling to get in-person participation, because a whole day dedicated to something is quite a difficult thing to do when you've got so many other things to do. We had just an avalanche of registrations, and we had to add in another session. So where we were struggling to get about 25, you know, into 5 sessions, we had over 100 registrations with waiting lists kind of on the side with people wanting to come in. And my favorite part of all of this and being able to adapt was that we were able to join these 2 groups together, which can learn so well from each other about, you know, what happens in the museum, what, you know, the general public know or want to learn about, and also including people in the Pacific and people of Pacific ancestry or origin. And having that contribution, I think, was the greatest thing that we could have asked for. And you know, we had people from the UK, from Fiji, from Tonga, from the Cook Islands, from Taiwan, from Japan, from the States, from Canada, from across Europe. So it really was this wide-ranging series of sessions that we were able to do. And what really helped with that in the lead up to these sessions was our good friend social media. And that's something that the original Bark Cloth project hadn't really focused on doing, because they had so many other things that they needed to concentrate on. But Twitter and Instagram were the social media platforms of choice. And it was really, really interesting to see the difference in audience interest, I guess you could say, between the 2 different platforms. So our Twitter base was very much a UK academic museum professional cohort, whereas Instagram and Facebook also, which we didn't use, but Instagram and Facebook in the Pacific are staples. If you have a phone, you have internet on your phone, you can easily get to these types of platforms. And so where we had a lot of interest in, you know, what is bark cloth? How is it made? Who makes it? You know, what are the materials? On Twitter, what people from the Pacific really wanted to see, and we hadn't had a chance to show because of, you know, everything else that had been going on, were actual museum collection pieces that originate from the Pacific, are 19th century pieces that aren't widely available in the Pacific to see. So there was this absolutely incredible reaction to these pieces, and the discussion and the comments that came out of it were wonderful as well. So working between the 3 different things, Twitter, Instagram, and Zoom, we ended up having really rich conversations. And you know, as Julian said again, you know, we kind of did think at one point, why did we think having face-to-face workshops was going to be, you know, the best thing that we could do, when having this online engagement really, you know, brought such a richer and a much more diverse conversation and audience and means of actually sharing our research findings. Yes, I won't talk about challenges yet. I'll wait till the next part. But
thanks, Katrina. That sounds amazing. Okay, well, I'll just stick with the order that we've established. So Megan, do you want to come in next?
So we were in an interesting position. Our activities with the school were planned for very early in March, and we were in this somewhat bizarre instance of talking to the kids physically in schools still about respiratory viral infections and getting them to learn how to wash their hands properly, where all the messages in the entire world were about how to wash your hands properly. So I think we did a good job in getting that message across. And the lockdown went in, I guess, a week after that, when we had been planning to have been back into the school to help the kids come up with their own activities or resources. And I don't think it was possible for us to expect the school or the parents to manage that on top of everything else that they were managing, just getting used to being in lockdown and managing online learning. So we took the decision to stop the project there. We did contribute to the Glasgow Science Festival that was online, Science on the Sofa, which Debbie is kindly advertising for us. So we adapted one of the activities we did with the kids in school, and we made a little video and put that out. So that at least we were able to contribute to the Science Festival that was there. We were lucky that the time we had planned between, I guess, summer and Christmas time was we had no plans to be in the school at that time. And we've been developing an app with the Glasgow School of Art team to, I guess, take some of the ideas from last year and display them on an app. So that's been really easy, because we've just been talking like, oh, you guys talk to everybody on Zoom with the Glasgow School of Art. And fortunately, we've now created this resource that will be really easy to provide to the school in the next month or so, because even if the kids still are at home, they'll be able to make use of the app that we've made. And we had a fantastic session where we used Teams to link into the school when they were still in class before Christmas, and talked to them about what the app was and got their feedback. And they've drawn most of the designs that will be in the app have come from the kids, from that just 45 minutes of us showing up and getting them to do some activities online. Worked much better than I had anticipated. And that's been a really good learning experience for what I think will happen in the next month or March, April. My hope is there'll be a little bit of in-school time where we can, again, link in via Teams to give some input. And then we're in the process of coming up with basically a pack that we can supply to the teacher and to parents to enable them to do fun activities with their kids that will get the main learning across. And our hope is that we can get the kids to come up with some little films that they create themselves that we can link together. So although they are maybe apart from each other, they can co-create an activity within their virtual groups rather than in their group in the class.
Thanks, Megan. Finally, can we come to Helen?
Yeah, thank you. So we were in a slightly different situation, although probably similar to Megan, because we're connected into the schools. That was the thing that was driving what we were able to do. So obviously the schools context, and then the type of work that we're doing at MCR is there's obviously child protection issues. So it wasn't straightforward to just be able to go straight online. The main thing is about being safe and ease of access. So I think initially MCR made it possible for some mentoring to be done virtually if that mechanism was accessible, because not even necessarily all the mentors, but not all the mentees have access to that as well. So contextually, the things that were happening were having a big impact. So MCR did create that opportunity, and also to do that through email, with the coordinator, as I mentioned earlier, being very much a go-between in that, and I think they came into their own during that time. For me personally, at the start of that, my young person was one of the people that didn't have access to that technology. So what we did was emailed. So I emailed my coordinator, and they then passed that on, or we texted. So we did it, and not always with a response as well. So I think it was more about making sure that connection continued. And I'd gone from obviously being in school each week with the young person, so doing that face-to-face, to then having to adjust. So I think that while those tools and that infrastructure was there, and I think MCR have done an amazing job with that, for some of us working with certain young people, that wasn't something we could pick up straight away. So yes, I reverted to emails and text and keeping in touch with the coordinator, and just making sure that message was going out, making sure that they knew we were still there. You know, silly things about, you know, how my rhubarb was going in the garden, or, you know, the fact that I was having to cut my own hair or something like that, just to keep it quite light, but to keep that connection going. And we'd also brought my mum in here because she was shielding, so we had that going on. So I knew that even if we opened back up, I wouldn't be able to go into the school. So there was quite a lot going on there. So I was really grateful to have even email and text and regular contact with the coordinator. As it then opened up, some MCR were able to make some of those face-to-face meetings happen again when the restrictions eased, which was great for some young people. But as I say, I was unable to then do that because of my own circumstances, so we had to continue. So there was times during that time I felt a bit sort of like I wasn't fulfilling my role, because you're not seeing the young person and you're not having that two-way conversation, which is really, really important. It's the main thing. But I think I just had to, you know, dig in and keep going. And even if you weren't getting a response, just to, you know, as I say those silly things and keep that going. Since then, once the school came back and virtual connection was able via the school, we met via Google Meet. So the pathway coordinator was present with my mentee, and I was able to then see them online, and that was brilliant. And it was just like we'd never gone away, so that was really, really good. And I think just felt reassured to see them and see they were well, and to hear them talking. And I think also to realise that just even though they hadn't had that face-to-face contact, they still felt engaged with the process, and that was reassuring. So I think that the mechanisms were there, and I think that across the MCR network there have been a lot of people that have engaged in that way. But I think while technology can help that, it can also be a barrier for some people, and even if you have access to a device or a phone, you may not be able to have that length of contact with your mentor that you would normally have. So it's been mixed, but it's kept going, and I think that's what's important, that those relationships stay constant, and the coordinator has been really good about that, and that I can see that my young person is still you know, still the same, and you know, yes, there's challenges, but we still have that relationship there, and I'm hoping that when things do open up, and certainly when my mum is protected, then we can restart that. But I think that will probably be the autumn for me now. So yes, it's as I say, been great to have any contact, but I think that for some young people that has been difficult, and that's been a shame.
Thank you, Helen. I'm now going to go back to my my techie moment, where I'm going to share what Julian found in terms of tools that supported his engagement. So here we go.
We were very humble in our capabilities with Zoom at the beginning. And so we started with a very simple Zoom activity with a kind of main session where we would present and get other people to present what we would want to do, and then activities in breakout rooms where we would use the whiteboard. And that was how much technology we limited ourselves with. The engagement with that was tremendous. And so then we started thinking a bit outside the box, well, outside the box, outside the whiteboard, because it was really about co-development. So we're not only trying to get people to talk, but also trying people to actually design something. And so we evolved this in activities which were supported by Melanie Jimenez in the school, where she provided artistic drawings of situations and scenarios that we used for people to draw. And so they actually created lots of almost like movie-like scenarios of particular situations, and that enabled us to say, okay, the constraints of the design need to be this. It needs to be able to work in this area in this way, where people have no prior training on these situations. So beyond the drawing, we then started thinking, okay, drawing is something that people do on the day at the time of the workshop. What if we could do something a bit more involving? So the final workshop will actually have 3D printed situations. And so we co-designed the holder and some of the platform, and this will be trialed over Zoom in 4 different countries at the same time, with everyone working together. I mean, you could argue that without this pandemic, we would never have thought of doing that. We would have gone to each country, yes, maybe, and done that iteratively. But the idea of being able to bring all of this together at one go, I mean, that's something that I would not have thought about, and that has been unlocked by Zoom.
Okay, I want to come back to, we kind of touched on some of the challenges that people faced in delivering their engagement. And this is a learning space, and I'm really keen to know, what did you find difficult? What worked? What didn't work? How did you manage to overcome this? And what have you learned from the process? So that's quite a long question. But Katrina, would you like to kick us off again with that?
Yes, sure. I think the challenges were many, and it took us a long time to just actually wrap our heads around the fact that this is what we had to do and this is how we had to do it. And that may have been one of the biggest challenges of all, because, having something completely planned out and how you're going to do it, it really did throw us as to, do we continue? What do we keep doing? How do we do it? And I think for us, using, again, coming back to social media, actually asking our community and our audience what they wanted out of an online experience was really, really helpful. And, if Zoom wouldn't have been good for them, what did they want? We threw out options of, do we do Facebook Live sessions, or do we do Zoom, or do we do Teams, or do we do Google Meet? Or it was really good. I may be showing my age, but I had to learn how to use Instagram stories and Instagram Live very quickly to be able to do all of this. But having that, even though it's not direct interaction, but having the ability in Instagram stories, for example, to ask questions or do polls, or have the community be able to ask questions about what you're doing, was a really nice way to be able to figure out how to do things in the best way. Because yes, we were so excited to share all of our research findings, but if we weren't going to be able to share it in an effective way and engage in an effective way, then we needed to figure out how to do it better. And I think in my last comment about how wonderful the online engagement was, as much as it was wonderful, our project really was based around this tangible material of cloth, of bark cloth. And so another challenge was, how do we convey the tangibility and the importance of it, and really the fact that there is this huge contemporary relevance and significance in the Pacific, in the UK, for communities, but only being able to show it in a 2D, in a two-dimensional way. And I think that's where, again, Instagram and social media came in handy, because we had the time to actually be able to show multiple different images in multiple different ways, where in these sessions, we had 1.5 hours, and trying to cram everything that we had in a 5-hour workshop into that 1.5 hours was really quite difficult. The same with the audience participation, kind of moving from a context of having in-person workshops where we knew in advance really who the people would be because of the museum community in the UK, having a very big audience of people who we don't really know who they are, and therefore not being able to anticipate kind of what they would want or what they would need, made that quite difficult in such a short time frame as well. But I think one of the things that we didn't consider when we thought, yes, let's go online and it's going to be wonderful and it's going to be great, was time zones. And that's something that really just kind of skimmed over everybody's heads, is that, you know, our lovely Reggie and Willisone, who were just wonderful to work with. I'm still so sad that I didn't get to meet them in person. But, you know, we have a 12-hour time difference with them. So to co-facilitate and to be able to engage with all of these different types of audiences, we had to get very creative with times of sessions. So it's being flexible in that way, I think, was a challenge and also a lesson that we needed to think about. But I think all in all of the challenges ended up, and because we had subsequent sessions, I would like to think that they got better with each session, because each session we did learn something from the last one. So yes, it was a huge learning curve, and I'm now on Instagram, so I now know how to use all of these different things. But yes, it was wonderful, and the feedback that we also received from participants, I should say, using the JISC online surveys was fantastic. It really helped us both before the sessions and after kind of round up and realize what was needed and what was appreciated.
Excellent, thanks. Always worth evaluating your engagement throughout. Great example there. Can we come to Megan next, please?
I think something that Helen said really resonated with me, and that we have to be very careful about in our case, the audience, the immediate audience, which are the kids in the class that we're working with, and the technology that they have access to and the time that they have available to put in. Was really easy when the kids were in school and we went for a set period of time, but it's much more challenging now, particularly if they don't come back to school in March. So I think that's going to be, as we go to the interacting with the pupil part of the project, going to be the really, really difficult part. And I think we may have to make decisions about whether we try and keep everything as simple as possible so we can include as many of the class, or whether there's some decision that we take. We are only concentrating on one part of the class. It's a primary 6-7 class, and the teacher only has live sessions with the primary 7 group. So that may give us some constraints. I know the teacher's very keen to keep it as much as to the total class as possible. And so I think the compromise will be on what we deliver rather than who we deliver it to, because I think keeping the teacher on board and taking their considerations is going to be one of the most important parts, because we're working with her for the next few years. I think it sounds like a couple of the people on the call will do more online in the future when we can do more in-person stuff. I think we'll keep ours as much in person as possible. Last year, being in the school and seeing how the pupils react to thinking about things and light bulb moments going on their heads, I think that's much easier to do in person than it is online. With this making of this fantastic app that we're doing, I think we will be able to widen what we're doing, either to other members of the school or to other schools nationally even. So I think we will have a more online component that will run alongside our in-person activities that we'll do in the future. Does that answer your question? It was such a long question.
I know, I'm sorry for the length of the question. Yeah, that sounds great. And I'm sure we've got time for questions later on as well, so I'm sure we'll dig into that a bit more. Helen, can I come to you now?
Yes, of course. So in terms of challenges, I touched on them before, really, you know, so I think obviously the fact that this is really based around us being in school, and addressing a lot of the issues that I've mentioned before, and there's privacy issues as well. So there's a lot to think about in terms of how we make that connection happen as well. So I think that some of the things that have been brought in to help with that will continue to help. And as I say, the fact that you've got a really supportive organisation in MCR Pathways is great. Them and the coordinator, I think, make it all hang together. And those ties within a network, I think, are really, really important at times like this, particularly when it is all Zoom and technology. That person coming onto the phone or sending you an email or telling you're doing a good job, or I think that's just really, really important. And I think that came to the fore even more so during this time. But I think, one of the positive sides, as I said, I felt quite restricted last year in terms of what I was able to add value. And I think that was part of me coming to yourself and to Monique to say, look, what can we do here? What else can we do now that I'm in the university and in this role? What can we work at? And I think there's some been brilliant things that have come out from that. I think we had a great engagement event where we brought, MCR and potential mentors into the university. And while, that's not directly impacting on the young people, I think just to bring that cohesion around the network and to give all of us support in that was really a really important thing for me. And I think, MCR really appreciated that as well. So from that, having that online session, we had those 50 people. Some of those went on to be mentors. Some are looking at it. I think that was a really positive addition that we as a university made in that. And I know the organisation are delighted with that increased connectivity with us. And I think from that, we're now looking at how can we build onto that within the university? How do we make that better for all of us that are mentors in the university, and how do we increase that and create almost like that community around that? And that's something we're exploring with MCR and with yourselves, as you know, at the moment as well. I think something else that came out of it, and someone put in the chat there about engagement work can inform our research, and I think it's really, really important and sometimes overlooked. And it's not a mercenary thing as such. But from my own experience in terms of working with a young person, for example, it was very evident they were very interested in business, they were interested in entrepreneurship. They were like, can you get a PhD in business? How does that even work? And the fact that I'd studied video games and business models, the fact that you then get a PhD that relates to video games, what is that even a thing? That was my response that I got, which was lovely. But as we started to talk, it was really evident that although they have MCR Pathways run these things called talent tasters, and the young people go out and have maybe a half day or a day in an organisation. They come to Glasgow University as well to experience what it's like out there and in different work situations, which is really important because a lot of these young people can't, for example, go on maybe a week-long or a 2-week-long internship with an organisation. Their circumstances don't allow it. So these tasters are really important. So what we've started to do now, spurred on by my young person and talking to colleagues in the business school and another organisation externally who's very supportive of young people enterprise, is we're looking at how we can come together to create a talent taster that focuses on business and management and entrepreneurship and enterprise and takes it to that cohort of people. And that really works for us as an organisation and what we're trying to do. It works for MCR and it also works for the Young Enterprise Scotland and what we could maybe achieve together. And in doing that, there are so many opportunities there for research and evaluation around that. And I've now brought other colleagues into that process so that we can set something up that really benefits the young people. But around that, what we are also building is something that we can monitor and evaluate to make better, but can then use to help these organisations scale that up to a Scotland-wide initiative that would allow enterprise to be taken into those communities more widely, and we in turn can research and evaluate and use that to inform as well. So I think that while last year, as I say, was a bit of a challenge in some ways, being able to help the organisation as a whole has really felt that I've added something back, and I think the university coming into that to support me and these organisations has been a really positive thing, and I'm really looking forward to how we do that. And we're devising those to be online, but with an eye to hopefully that will then be in person as we go forward. And my own mentoring hopefully will start back in the autumn in a real person way. So yeah, I think that's a really big positive to take out of the experience. But yes, it'll be nice to get back to in-person time again.
Thanks,
Thank
Helen.
you,
That
Sarah.
sounds really, really exciting. I've got one more video from Julian that I'm now going to share before we open up for questions. Just a reminder, if you've got a question, stick it in the chat box with a Q in front of it. But here is the final video that I recorded with Julian.
It is obvious that we are always going to consider this now. So we're not going to go back to the default position that in all instances we need to be there. I'm very sure, even when the vaccine has brought about travel and etc. I think we will go and do face-to-face interventions, but we will also use a lot of online tools. I think that's very valid. The other thing that has changed the perception is the loss of control. In big Zoom meetings like this, very often if you want people to contribute, you've got to let go of control. You can't actually get their contributions to be exactly what you want, and you've got to say, this is okay, we'll get something that will be very valuable like this, which is not what we used to do. We used to be very clear into what the activity should be and what the result should be, and if the result's not that, then something went wrong somewhere. And so you have to acknowledge the fact that yes, there will be some people that will be left out because it didn't work out, or some people that will find some strange things that are not very useful. But at the same time, you'll also find the gem in there that enable you to go leaps and bounds beyond what you plan to do.
Yeah, I really like Julian's message about relinquishing control, being more zen about things. So I wanted to give over the last 20 minutes or so to questions from the floor. So I've got Cassie, who's been monitoring the questions. Do we have any?
We have, and actually there's been a few questions as well as a few answers in the chat box. So thanks for engaging with that. Do have a read? But I think one of them is certainly worth picking up here. So there was a question from Maria Fletcher asking about how did you identify which schools to work with? How did you connect with the widening participation team at the uni? So I suppose the answer that's there in the chat really points to the fact that it's a real team effort, and whoever's there at the coalface has already been in touch with support services across the university beforehand. And I suppose that's definitely a message that we're really keen as a network to emphasize, is you're not alone in this, and do reach out for support so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. I don't know if there's anything else that anyone wanted to pick up on that question. Yes, go for it, Megan.
Can I just add to that? Basically repeat what you're saying, but more so, we would not have got the Scott Penn grant without the support of a number of people, probably mostly on this call, who read our grant and gave lots of fantastic criticisms, constructive criticisms that made it 1,000,000 times better. So we had support from different people at different stages, I think was a really key part. So helping to get going with local support from someone who works in my institute, all the way to Debbie helping us to have a really clear application that actually said what we were going to do and how we were going to modify it. So I would really encourage people to get as much feedback as they can from as many of the resources that the university now have to offer.
Super, thank you so much. There's one here, we'll come back to a few maybe more specific questions later, but there's one here from Mathis that's interesting and open to everyone. So a question to anyone really, are the questions that you get online different to the ones in face-to-face outreach? And sort of a related point, in your opinion, is the hurdle for people to pose a question higher or lower? I don't know if anyone wants to come in on that. It's open to anyone.
Should I start, since I was the starter in the first place? Yes, I think the questions that we got are very different, and I think there's many reasons for that. I think online especially, like I mentioned before, because we didn't actually have the physical objects in front of us, and it really was just a site thing that we were doing, it led to very different questions, but also I think questions that wouldn't have been considered if we had to use our imaginations, or we didn't have to use our imaginations and think beyond being able to physically engage with the material. And yes, I think the hurdle for people asking questions is much greater online. I think it's much scarier online. You don't have that, you know, physical intimacy of having other people with you and around you. And so, like, I think it was Megan said that you would much rather stick to face-to-face contact. I think that is definitely a huge benefit of that, because, you know, you get to have a camaraderie that you don't necessarily have online. So it always takes the one brave person to ask the question, and then everybody starts feeling a bit more comfortable. But we did have one session where I think I talked for a good 45 minutes before anybody made a peep. So that was quite something.
Thanks, Katrina. I'm wondering actually whether Zara has any take on that. But, you know, I know it's a bit of a joke in terms of, you know, music playing at the start of the session, for example, but I wonder how, you know, how deliberate a choice that is in terms of how you create a mood, which is so hard to do, or harder to do online.
Yeah, I think the music idea started as a bit of a joke, but I've found, and we found in training that we do together with yourself, Cassie and Monique, that if you play some music when people are dropping into your training, it tends to surprise people or relax them, and kind of sets the mood a bit more informal. And I do think it has helped encourage people to participate a bit more. I've also found that if I'm running training and I start with my camera off, people joining the call will also switch their cameras off. So if you start off with your camera on, that kind of sets the expectation almost. But I completely empathise with you, Katrina. It can be really off-putting sometimes if you are presenting to just a wall of squares. But interesting about, yeah, the you know, the difficulty or the challenges of asking questions online. I actually find sometimes the chat box quite a useful function, in that if you're not feeling confident enough to speak up, the chat box is quite an easy alternative. But I think it just completely depends on personality types and how you feel about technology as well.
Can I just come in on that one as well? Just to add, I guess that's kind of one of the rationales for having so many different ways to engage with this forum, and because people were really telling us that, you know, some folk would love to write a blog, others would be happy doing a podcast, some just don't want their face out there at all, but would love to contribute on the Padlet. So I think that, yeah, please just keep telling us what you want, and we'll keep trying to design new things for that. Cheers.
To jump in on that, Monique, you mentioned the blog, and I know that there's a question here about blogging. If someone is dead keen to write a blog about their experiences, what do they do?
Yeah, please just email me. So if you go to, I'll put the link again here in the chat. There's a form that you can fill in, or you can just email me, and it's just monique.campbell@glasgow.ac.uk, and I'll put that in the chat as well. Cheers.
Thanks, Monique. There is another question here from Salma. Very interesting discussion in caps. Thanks, Salma. Salma's question is, what's your advice for someone starting their research requiring adolescent participation? What's the way to go? Science festivals, schools, how to get in touch with schools when you're an outsider with no connections to schools in the UK? Anyone with school experience?
I know that we do have, I mean, it depends on your discipline, but do we have Aileen Hamilton on the call?
Yes, I'm here. Yeah.
Would you like to come in on that one?
Yeah, so we run the STEM Ambassador Programme, which is actually a UK-wide programme, but we run the West of Scotland STEM Ambassador hub, and that's where anybody with any connection to STEM at all, it doesn't have to be a scientist or engineer, but just some interest in STEM, can sign up online to be a STEM Ambassador. They do the online induction, they get an online free disclosure check, and then what we do is we get loads of requests in from schools and community groups asking for volunteers to help with STEM activities. So if you have no connections with schools whatsoever, it's a fantastic way that you look down the list of requests and you find one that you're interested in, or you find a school that's local to you, or because it's online, the school can be anywhere at the moment. It could be to help with British Science Week. It could be something that's your particular topic of interest. The other thing ambassadors can do now is they can make an offer on the system. So if there's no requests that match what you're looking for, you can actually write a description to say, well, this is what my job is, this is what I want to offer a school. Is any teacher interested in taking it up? So I would say that's a perfect way as your first point of contact to get in touch with schools, and maybe do 5 activities in 5 different schools, and then decide the demographics of the type of school you want to work with, and then form a relationship with them, and then establish what you can do going forward.
And this is for people who have are working in STEM specifically.
Yes. Well, we do have quite a lot of social scientists as well, actually, because a lot of the arts, obviously, is digital and technology related. So we do have quite a lot of ambassadors who do not have a STEM qualification, but they work with tech. And it's really important to show that the STEAM, if you think, rather than STEM in that sense. So you just register on stem.org.uk. That's the National STEM Profile for STEM Learning. You create your profile as a STEM ambassador, and then the local hub takes it from there. So it's very, very simple.
Perfect. Do we have any other comments on that one? Oh, Debbie's coming on the chat. Another route to schools would be via the widening participation team. Absolutely. So another support that you can tap into here at the university.
I'd just add as well, don't be shy to get in touch with public engagement staff within your college or across the university, because we're really good at pointing people in the right direction, even if we're not the person to talk to. But often we can point you to really useful resources.
I was just going to add that as well. I mean, for things like, certainly anything I've been involved in, I've found it just going to other colleagues that I know are working in that space as well. Obviously now we've got the forum, that will help, but certainly reaching out, you know, if, for those of us that are involved in those networks already, happy to make those introductions, and you know, if that helps as well. The forum will help, but that offer's there if need be.
Can I just ask, do we have a central list then of all the people that sit on like the public engagement committee group so that people could find all of those folk? I couldn't remember if it's on your web pages.
We do. So on the public engagement web pages, if you click on the public engagement coordinators group, there's a big list of the people working in public engagement across the university. So you can have a wee nosy and see who is working on supporting engagement within your college. Many of those people are actually on the call today, so it may be worth just doing some quick introductions while we're all here. I'm here to support public engagement across all the colleges, so I provide kind of central support. We also have Cassie.
Yes, hello. So yeah, I work in the College of Arts. So I'm split across the college as a whole, and specifically within the School of Culture and Creative Arts. But yeah, if there's anything from across the college, please do get in touch.
And then we have Monique.
Sorry, I'm actually live editing pictures at the same time, which is why I keep going away from the screen. But yeah, I work in the College of Social Sciences and also with our partners at Glasgow Centre for Population Health, and some of my colleagues are on this call too. And just to reiterate, for the blog and really any contribution, we would love to hear from external partners too. So if you're working with community partners who you'd like to bring in, or who would like to sort of write something or speak or come to the engagement forum, then please, they're welcome too. Thank you.
We also have Becky and Alison if you're in the MVLS college, if they want to give us a wave.
Can I also invite Tracy Ibbotson to say hi? Tracy is the PPI, Public Patient Involvement and Engagement Lead for MVLS.
Hello.
Sorry, Tracy, dropping you in there. I just realised you'd made a couple of really insightful comments in the chat and thought I'd give you the chance to say hi as well.
Do we have Tracy? Tech issues.
Yes, hello, yes, I'm here. Yes, I work, do public involvement, and I'm really enjoying hearing about public engagement, because often they're put at separate ends of a spectrum, and I'm actually finding I've been very involved, and I'm finding the engagement work really interesting, and I think there's such a crossover. So it's been really interesting discussion today. Yeah, we have a group of patient and carers group that meets up regularly to discuss grant applications if anybody's interested in that. I could go on and on and on, but I won't, because I just like to hear about more engagement.
Thanks, Tracy. And I would say there's also just such a wealth of expertise on the call right now working in engagement. So going to colleagues, Melanie in School of Engineering, really experienced in engagement as well, who's been doing tech support today and screenshots, and as you saw, supporting Julian's work as well. I just want to come back to our panelists and check if there are any more questions for them, or if they have anything that they would like to say before we come to the end of the Q&A part. We've still got a little bit of time, so I'm just conscious that we've got them now, so what else can we suck out of them?
Well, it's not a direct question, but maybe an interesting conversation starter is that point made about relinquishing control. And I wonder if the panelists have anything to say about that in relationship to partnership working, perhaps, or how comfortable a feeling that is to relinquish control when there are so many involved.
I think that over the years, I've become quite good at that. I work with a lot of artists and participate in a lot of kind of art activations and reactivations and things like that. And we've come to adopt this open space methodology of working where, you do have this loose framework of what you want to do, but what happens actually on the inside isn't necessarily completely planned out. But that is very hard to convince other people to want to do as well, I've found. So especially when I think it was Julian that said, you know what you need out of the engagement already, so you really want it to fit into this little box. And yes, we do have to think about that for various different reasons, like ref and all sorts of other things. But it really is quite nice being able to relinquish some of the control as well, because then it allows for, like you said, Cassie, this partnership to be able to be established, and this reciprocal relationship that can continue beyond what you're actually doing. So for example, these sessions that we did afterwards, we've had people come back to us and say, I know that you're not doing these anymore, but can you do this for our community? Can you do this for our group? Can you, so I've done a few sessions separately for different Pacific communities, and just I think having the flexibility to be approachable, I guess, in that sense as well. And I didn't plug it before, and I will plug it in the chat, but we revamped the website for the project as part of this online engagement, and all of the resources that were created out of the need for online engagement as opposed to real in-person engagement are all now on the website, and other museums around the world and projects are now looking towards those and using them as templates as to how they can engage further with their community. So it's that partnership thing and not needing to be in control of everything that I think is quite helpful.
Yeah. I mean, I completely agree. I think particularly now as we're moving on to more of a sort of multi-partner approach in engagement and away from more sort of my personal drive there, bringing together different organisations has been really interesting. And I think we've had to give up control quite early on in that process, in that if we're creating something for young people, we have to have them as part of the co-creation process. And we've brought in young people from MCR that are called ambassadors, who have gone through the process before, to help us design what this thing might be, in terms of something that will fulfill the needs of those young people in that space. And that will make it a better outcome. It might take longer, and it might not be what we expected it to be, or what might fit our parameters for how we're going to evaluate and do this, but what will emerge will be something that's actually what's good for that community. And I think that's always the thing about public engagement. Yes, we're coming at that because we want to help, but we want to evaluate, we want to use it as a project, we want to take research from that. But you know, these are real living people with real issues, and, you know, we are in there to help, you know, and I think that's a really important thing to remember all the time. So I know it's really difficult to balance, and sometimes some of the outputs don't match what we're asked to obtain as outputs, but there's other value going on there, and I think that's the balance to be had. But I think giving up control is in some ways is good, and then recognising what we as a university can bring to that project is also good, because in my case for this other project, you know, things like monitoring, evaluation, you know, supporting, you know, using that to inform policy is really, really important, and can sometimes help with some more resource constrained organisations around us. So I think it's just about everyone working out where they can most add value, but as a whole, are we ultimately giving value to those users that have chosen to engage with us in the community, because that's a real privilege having access to that, and I think we've got to nurture that as well, even if it maybe just gives us the 2 outputs instead of the 4 or something. So but as I say, we're learning in that as well.
Just to add to what Helen said, I think it's about trusting those partners that you're working with, which for me was really easy with the teacher, because I know that she's an expert in what she does. But it was, although we didn't get to the pupils designing their own activities last year, we did have the period of time where they did some planning of what they were going to do. And that was my biggest worry, that they would just come up with really boring things or really derivative things that basically just mirrored what we had done with them. But I was amazed at how creative they were and how thoughtful, and how their ideas have gone in. They have changed the way we've made the app, because we asked them, how do you think this should work? And they came up with ideas that we wouldn't have come up with. So I think as someone who's not very good at trusting other people to do things, that this is how it's going to be.
Yeah.
It's a really good experience to learn to trust people who are not experts in respiratory disease.
Absolutely.
Anyway, to come
Absolutely.
up, or experts in public engagement. They are the people we're delivering to, so they know what is good for them, and it's about listening and taking on board what they've got to say, and just trusting that they're going to step up to it.
Yeah, and I think also they often know that area in a very different way from us, and for a lot of us trying to get our messages across, whether it's our research or services or whatever it is we're trying to do, that interface is really, really important. So, you know, what better than to work with our customers in that? And yeah, trust is really important. And our young people have already come up with ideas that we would not have thought about, no matter how smart we all think we are. You know, they've already come back with that. So I think that co-created end product will be so much better, you know, and it gives them ownership and buy-in as well, which I think is really important in these projects.
Yep, some really important messages there. Before we wrap up and thank our amazing speakers, could I ask, I'm going to just launch a very short poll about your experience of today's event. It should hopefully be appearing on your screen right now. Give me a thumbs up if it has. Good, okay, excellent, it's working. So it's just a couple of quick questions just to get your feedback. But while you're doing that, can I just say a huge thanks to our panelists from today who've been absolutely amazing. So much insightful stuff coming out from today. Can't do like a round of applause, but maybe we could do the clap react. But thank you so much. Katrina, Megan, Helen and Julian, who's not here but was in the interviews, for giving up their time today. It's been super interesting, and all of your projects sound amazing as well, so thank you so much. Maybe I should play the sound of applause.
Thank you, Dana. Thanks to Monique for making it happen. That's fantastic.
Thank you for voting in the poll, everybody. For people that are hanging on for the networking, we're going to get started with that at 11:30.
Zara, can I just
Sorry, I was just going to ask if we'd put together a very quick Eventbrite registration for our next one. Should I stick that in the chat just now if anybody wants to sign up? We're going to add to it, but we've just put the basics in there now to if you want to get involved in that. So I'll add that, and now I'll shut up and let Monique speak.
It's okay. No, I was just going to say, if anyone's got ideas that they would like for themes for future engagement forums, I think at the moment we're planning on running these possibly monthly. We'll see how that goes. But if folk have got things that they'd really like to talk about or like to hear about, please just put it on the Padlet. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. And if you've got any comments, just keep them coming. I'm just going to put the Friday feeling music back on while we have our comfort break.
Oh no, that's the wrong link.